Hello and welcome to the Irish Marketing Podcast, powered by IMJ and Tinpot Productions. I'm Daryl from Tinpot. Now, I think it's fair to say that we are all becoming accustomed to living in a world cheek by jowl with AI slop, misinformation, disinformation, fake news, etc. But are we starting to see some kickback to this algorithmic bot-based nonsense? Well, Newsbrands Ireland, representing most of Ireland's national press publications, recently commissioned a research report called News for the Next Generation. The report surveyed 2,000 people between the ages of 16 and 29, and amongst the findings there were some interesting results. So according to the report, 80% engage with a news brand every week, and 87% rate Newsbrands as the most trusted source. So are young people more media savvy than we might expect? And is there a pendulum swing towards legacy trusted media? Well, on today's pod, we'll get stuck into this issue with two senior industry executives. So we've got Richard Bogie, who is MD of News Ireland, of course, over the Sunday Times and the Irish Sun. He spoke about his storied history working in the publishing industry and the daily excitement that brings.
An old boss of mine used to say, we bake our cakes every day. The product is fresh and new. It's not like a Mars bar, which is the same every time we pick it up.
Also, we've got Chris Cashen, Group Head of Strategy at WPP, who joined us in studio to give the planner's perspective on this report. And amongst other things, he spoke about how trusted sources are an informed choice.
Nobody wants a nice house in a bad neighbourhood. So if I'm an advertiser and I'm looking to place something somewhere, I want to place something that's trusted and trusted locally.
We'll get to that in the second half, but we start with Richard Bogie, MD of News Ireland and News Scotland. And with a varied press portfolio, he splits his time between Glasgow, Edinburgh, London and Dublin. So we're delighted when he took some time to join us in studio. When I spoke to Richard, I wound the clock back to his first introduction to the world of newspapers. So we'll start at the very beginning, if you don't mind. Am I right in saying that you started out in this industry at the age of 12?
Absolutely on point. Yes, I was a paperboy at the age of 12 and fell in love with the medium. Yes, absolutely. John Pilger's Killing Fields articles were the ones that first made me realise this was not just an industry with scale and reach, but it actually changed the world order and exposed wrongdoing, and that kind of appealed to the idealistic young 12-year-old. So it's a long career.
And have you stayed in the same industry since the age of 12?
I've had a little excursion. I went into the magazine industry. In my mid-20s, I worked for a business in London called IPC Magazines, the Ministry of Magazines, and it had everything from Marie Claire to the NME and Melody Maker to Yachting World and Golf Monthly. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't for me. I preferred the kind of cutting edge of breaking news, big stories, and all the interest of sport and the bits in between, property, travel, all that sort of stuff. So it was newspapers that were in my blood, and that's what I went back to in my 30s. And it's a long time since my 30s, and I'm still there loving it every day.
I have a big 4-foot cardboard box full of stacks of NMEs. Music magazines. It was the golden era of publications and magazines really back then, wasn't it?
It was. And the era that I was there for NME was as we moved from grunge, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, into Britpop and Oasis and Blur and all those Pulp, etc. And I was there for a great period of time, but it was a good period of life, but it wasn't a career that would last long, shall we say. Burnout was definitely an option if you stayed. So I thought, get back to what I love, and that's when I went back into newspapers.
But you've dealt with publications to some extent really throughout your career.
Yeah, I was on the sales side, so I was a sales boy, as it were, on the advertising side, and then I moved across into some more general management type roles. I've done a bit of national press, a bit of local press. I've been working in Scotland for a good part of 30 years and in Ireland for much of 20 years. So I've had a great opportunity to see all of media across UK and Ireland and see how it's grown and changed over those periods.
And undoubtedly it's changed over that period of time, but have you tried to maintain some of that perspective of the wide-eyed 12-year-old in terms of your first experience with press and, to maintain that, I suppose, that perspective to a certain extent?
Yeah, I think the great joy of the product is, an old boss of mine used to say, we bake our cakes every day. The product is fresh and new. It's not like a Mars bar or something like that, which is the same every time we pick it up. So every product that we produce, and that's true of the the Irish Times and the Mirror, as much as it is of our titles, is fresh and new every day, and it gives you great joy to pick it up as a printed product or open the app or get a social media post or a new piece of video footage and sort of unwrap it. It gives you a great joy to see the creativity and the artistry of the journalists at work. If you're not delighted with your product every day, then it's another career for you. I love it.
I thought it was fitting just to mention the fact how you'd been in the industry since you were young, because we are talking, of course, about young people today and the recent Newsbrands report around their engagement. And it seems like we maybe are perhaps misunderstanding or perhaps underestimating young people's intelligence when it comes to their understanding around misinformation and where good information comes from. Is that a fair summary of what the report is leading us to?
Yeah, I think that's true. We came at this as the commercial steering group from Newsbrands Ireland wanted to look into the ways in which young people consume news. And there's an easy and quite lazy assumption that young people are more interested in TikTok, that social media has taken their attention elsewhere, that screens dominate their life, and that they've got no interest in the world beyond influencers. And what we knew from TGI was that we've, as an industry, reach is not a problem. 82% of adults in Ireland reach for a Newsbrand at least once a week, and that's through all sorts of different platforms, whether it's print, digital, social, video, etc. And when we look at TGI, you can see that 76% of people under the age of 30 reach for a Newsbrand. So we felt that there was something there, but we wanted to go deeper. And this excellent research by Colortext has shown us that generation are deeply concerned. Over 78% of them are concerned that fake news is dominating social media. And 57% of them would go to a recognised Newsbrand to verify and authenticate a story that they'd seen elsewhere. So actually what emerges is a very engaged generation, a very concerned generation about news, and they want to know, is this true? Is this real? Where can I authenticate and verify that story? And so what they do is they come to trusted media like Newsbrands to authenticate those stories, which is very encouraging and gives us belief that there's great longevity in this business and that there's a concerned and interested generation out there that want to know more about the world around them.
So is it the case maybe that nobody's suggesting that young people and people in general don't use influencer or other sources, but that the go-to place, if they think maybe the story isn't what I think it is, would be to go to a trusted source, of which a Newsbrand would be in that category? Yeah,
absolutely. And listen, these are brands with great heritage and legacy, and that gives us a great opportunity. When you've seen the Irish Times, the Irish Farmers Journal, the Sunday Times, and many of the other publications that sit in the Newsbrands Ireland team, you'll see that those have been in your house for years. The parental legacy, that heritage of knowing that your elder brothers and sisters, your parents would look to those brands. That has an influence on people, and they know that it's a trusted source, and therefore you can rely on the information. And we're regulated. We have a lot of regulation about how we approach stories, and we go through a lot of processes in terms of fact-checking and making sure that a story stands up, as they say. And that inevitably makes us the go-to place for verification and authentication.
And do you feel, even though people understand the heritage, it is a job of work on an ongoing basis for you to try and not just maintain that trust, but also communicate the fact this is why we are a trustworthy service? Because some people may not understand the regulatory environment or the fact that you're kind of ring-fenced by rules and regulations, legitimately, I might say. But is there sometimes, from a publishing point of view, or are you thinking we need to kind of billboard that trust as against other media that might not be in the same situation?
Yeah, I think that this piece of research is an opportunity for us to do that, because trust plays into a number of things. One is our status and position as go-to media for authentication and verification. The second is that it has an extremely beneficial impact for advertisers in terms of being a brand safe environment and creating a halo effect of advertising effectiveness. And the recent research by Peter Field showed that advertising outcomes were 52% greater in established Newsbrand platforms than advertising campaigns that were not in those platforms. So there is a clear correlation between trust and advertising effectiveness. And then I think that the third thing, and is the question you're asking, is do we need to make more of it? I think we've got an absolutely fantastic platform with this piece of research to say it's not just us saying it, it's actually you as a young audience telling us this information and playing it back to us and telling us why you trust us and giving us much more colour around what you want to see from us and how you want to see those stories portrayed.
And that was Richard Bogie, MD of News Ireland, giving his views on the recent Newsbrand research. I also caught up with Chris Cashen from WPP. And when we spoke, I started by asking about whether there might be another consideration that might be relevant to his clients. So this idea of ethics, right? So if you take brands, financial decisions are, in terms of media buying, that's the most important thing. But there are sometimes where ethical issues are a consideration. So if you take sustainability, for example, brands might make a decision to say, okay, we want to invest in this because it might not be the most financial decision, but there is a sustainability piece that we'd like to cover. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, should we be thinking ethically about, or should brands be thinking ethically about decisions they're making about helping to support media which are kind of duty bound to maintain trust and are ring-fenced by regulations and rules of regulations? Because if we lose that, then it's a considerable problem, isn't it?
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to be giving any more money to platforms that are supported by the likes of Elon Musk, and not necessarily because of anything to do with him personally, but if we don't have a thriving community here, if we don't have a thriving kind of media landscape here, then what are we losing that to? I wrote a piece recently that was talking about Irish radio stations and the fact we pay so little of Irish artists. It's under 15% in some cases. In that case, we're going to go to this kind of global FM solution that plays just global hits. And it's the same when you talk about news, brands and publishing. So do we just want the top news stories around the world, or do we want something that's actually local? That's a thriving kind of publishing market, and that should be the way it is. And as well as that, I think it holds us all to account in terms of if we've a vibrant kind of publishing market here that is well supported, that's best for us. If you're taking away what the ethics behind it is, if you're just looking at it from environment itself, nobody wants a nice house in a bad neighbourhood. So if I'm an advertiser and I'm looking to place something somewhere, I want to place something that's trusted and trusted locally. Whereas in a lot of these platforms and everything else, first of all, what you find is that the attention is critically low in it, you know what I mean, because just by the nature of them. And actually you want environments where the context is right, where people are actually sitting back and actually trying to consume information in a kind of higher quality environment. So there's a number of different ways I would look at that, but yes, absolutely. I think from an ethical standpoint, it's something we wrestle with within WPP, but actually I have to wrestle with as well in terms of, am I making sure that we're supporting the local market as much as possible? Because if we're not, what are we going to be left with? We have to be careful of those decisions because ultimately that's where it leads us, and that's not a good place for us to go.
And obviously you're dealing with brands and clients all the time.
Yeah.
Do you feel, are they hearing that conversation around the ethical piece, or is that, are you fighting that fight in terms of saying to make that case?
I think pieces of research like this certainly help our case. What I would say is more often than not, that's a nice add-on for clients if you're to say, listen, we're going to give you a really, really highly effective campaign that's absolutely going to deliver on whatever objectives you set for us, and we're going to make sure that we support the Irish publishing landscape. They go, that sounds great. Now, if I take the Irish publishing landscape out of that and just say I give you a highly effective campaign, that's where it becomes a little bit dicey, because what they really want to do is achieve their objectives. Now, what we have to make sure that we frame that in is that we're saying news brands and Irish publishers are absolutely sacrosanct in terms of actually delivering against that.
So you're making that case to your clients, but is there also a sense that you also need to make that case to junior or younger planners who are coming into agencies who are digital natives and maybe haven't grown up with press as their primary source of information?
Yeah, well, listen, I think there's a few initiatives that news brands do which I think are really important. So they do a paraplanning competition, which is with younger planners. And to be honest with you, that's music to my ears, because the one thing that I think that we're losing necessarily within the marketing community, or predominantly within the marketing community, is that practitioner's kind of mindset. So that's a competition where they get young planners together all around a shared brief and people come back and respond with it. Now, what's brilliant about that is they're spending an entire day in a kind of within the news brands kind of ecosystem. So as well as that, I just saw in the Business Post on Sunday There's a double page spread for Spinal Injuries Ireland. Now, that was actually done by 2 Canyon Line winners. But the idea behind that was that the width of a double page spread is the same width as a wheelchair. And it was encouraging people to pick up the newspaper and walk around with it and just see how difficult it is for somebody who's in that situation. That is an amazing use of medium and message together. The more they can get younger people who are not native to Newsbrands in the traditional sense that you or I might have been exposed to it, the more that they can do that, the better that it's going to be for all of us. Because we've seen with the Canyon Line winners how incredible kind of ingenuity is there within our younger marketers. We've seen with the power planning competition that they do every year, the level that comes out from that is incredible, right? So all we need is people actually to just make sure they're spending enough time within that so that they understand what the best way to benefit that is for the advertisers, but for themselves as practitioners as well as anything.
That was Chris Cashen from WPP there, giving us his perspective from the planning side on the report and what it means for him and for people who work with him. If you are interested in the report in more detail, we'll link it in the show notes so you can find more information there. And of course, as ever, if you've enjoyed the podcast, please follow or leave a nice review if that is your inclination. The podcast is recorded, edited and mixed at Tinpot Productions Studios, and thanks to Sean for engineering. We're back next Friday, wherever you pick your pods. Thanks for listening.